Welcome, collectors, to another episode of Collector to Collector. I am John, the 3D 80s kid, and with me today is a special guest who is just completed his first year on YouTube, but has been a long-time collector and has an awesome vintage and pre-war collection of baseball cards. So stick around and check it out.
Welcome to For Collectors.
All right, hello. With me today, Dan from Dan's Vintage Baseball PC. Welcome to For Collectors.
Hey, John, how are you doing today? Thanks for inviting me on.
It's great to have you. Been loving what you've been doing this last year on YouTube, interviewing lots of people, many of whom are not, on YouTube at all. So we're getting exposure to these collections that, would never see the light of day for us here. So it's been kind of awesome. But today it's all about you, though. You're normally focused on your guest and discussing what they did, but today we're going to get a more in-depth look at Dan. So to kick things off, in your youth, what was your sports participation? What did that look like when you were growing up?
I was a baseball and basketball player. My basketball playing career ended in junior year of high school when I sat on the bench for the varsity team and decided that I didn't want to play anymore. But baseball is actually quite good. I played from 8 years old, and then in my high school years, I actually became really good, and I was a pitcher, left-handed pitcher, and I went on to play Division III college as a left-handed pitcher. And this is quite a long time ago, so the sport has changed a lot. The how you get into college baseball and how you get recruited and travel and all that stuff has changed a lot. But yeah, no, I actually had a pretty decent slider, so that took me all the way to Division III college. So yeah.
Well, that's great. I mean, I mean, any of us, making any form of college, is better than 99+% of the people that played baseball out there. So it's cool. So.
Yeah.
But so then when and how did you start getting into collecting pieces of cardboard?
So my collection started in the summer of 1970. I was not even 7 years old yet, but I was the youngest of 7 children of a big family with a lot of cousins and stuff. So my brothers, my sisters, everybody used to buy me baseball cards. That was the way, I guess, to keep me happy and satisfied and occupied. So I would get, a pack of cards, Topps 1970, and I got tons and tons of them. And my cousin, who's the same age as me, came up that summer, and we had a big family party and stuff. And he always still remembers to this day that I had like 8 Hank Aaron's, and I wouldn't give him any of them. And he was very upset about that. And he still gives me a hard time 60 or 50 years later. But anyway, so I collected in 70. 71 was the same way. 72. By 73, I was almost 10. I was a little less into it. 74, 75, less into it, and I kind of faded out. I got older and cooler and all that other stuff. But back in high school is when I started collecting vintage cards, because I had a few vintage cards from back when I was a little kid. But we started collecting stuff. It was a group of guys that I had, that were all sports guys in high school. Like, they played sports. They weren't nerds. They played sports. They were good at it. And we all collected cards. So I had a pretty decent vintage collection beginning in like the late 70s. I went to card shows. There was a big one at Nassau Coliseum. There was Plainview had one. And so I remember going to card shows, going to card shops, actually, with these guys. And then I went to college. So that kind of faded out. After that, my nephew, who was born in 1979, he's my older sister's son. He's only 15 years younger than I am. But when he was a little kid, he started collecting, and he came up for the entire summer. And this is like the late 80s. and I really got into it again at that point. More vintage, more complete sets, 80s and early 90s rookies, the Greg Jeffries of the world. So I was into that for a long time. Not a long time, for several years in that time frame. And then he got older, I got married, and then after that, I didn't collect cards again until like the mid 2000s, like 2010, 11, 12. When Sandy hit, the hurricane, my parents lived on the South Shore of Long Island, and they got hit pretty bad. And it's the first time water came all the way up into the house of any hurricane ever. And like about a third of my collection was destroyed. It was there in their house, in the lower family room, and about a third of it got destroyed. And I, at that point, took all of my what I could salvage out of it, brought it back into New York City, put it into storage, and since then, 2012 until now, I've been sort of going through it bit by bit, figuring out what I have, and I'm done with it for the most part. But opening up a binder of 1970s cards and finding a 71 Clemente that I thought was good, and you couldn't even pull it out because it was like stuck and it was wet, and it was pretty bad. But I have rebuilt the collection. I've gone back. I've purchased cards that I had when I was a little kid. I purchased cards I had when I was a teenager, and now I feel like I've rebuilt the collection far beyond anything that I had at any point in my collecting career. So I feel at this point is my golden age of collecting.
Awesome. But one question that popped in my head, as far as in the 70s, well, looking back at myself, in the 80s, I felt like 50s and 60s would be vintage sort of, and 70s was more attainable. 50s and 60s, no way, was my mindset anyways. But in the 70s, then, in high school, what were you thinking of as vintage, and how far back did it actually go?
Well, when I had in the late 70s, when I started actually collecting vintage, anything that was older than 70 for me was vintage. So a 1960 card would be a vintage card. But I mostly at that point was collecting 50s and 60s, and I started to understand that Topps existed. I mean, I'm sorry, that Bowman existed, that Goudey existed. I actually had 4 T206 cards at that time. So I was collecting actually 5 T206 cards. And I had a 33 or 34 Goudey Luke Appling card. I had some 50 Bowman, but mostly I was looking for 50s and 60s, Mantle and the such. Musial, Ted Williams, the guys that still get collected to this day.
Oh, sure. And then as far as building your collection then later as an adult, so it sounds like you built some of the 70s sets. Is that what's going on? You've got those in binders then?
Yeah, so that was it was, I think it was 2018. I was on eBay looking at cards, and I saw a collection of a near set of 1970 cards. And I already had a good collection of it in a binder, and I had a lot of the stars and stuff. So I figured this is the time. I'm going to do the complete 70 set. It's a set that I've been wanting to complete since I was 6 years old, and so I finished that. And I was like, okay, I'm done. My collection is complete. I can stop. And then of course I'm like, maybe I should do 71. That's a set I really. And then I went ahead and I did 71, and that's around the time when I started to become very active in vintage card collecting on Twitter. And so I started the 71 set. I actually traded for a lot of those cards with my friend Mark Del Franco. And then I decided to do 72, which I have yet to complete. And then there was, I completed 56. I completed 48 Bowman. I'm working on a bunch of other sets, but that's what started the sort of getting back into online, eBay searches, and getting to know people, and, starting to go to shows again. Once I started to go to shows again, that kind of really set the bug off for me. Because it's funny, because when I went back to shows, it was before COVID, and I was going to the show in Westchester. It's the county center, and it's a really big show. I still go to it now, but I remember spending less time on cards and more time on autographs, because I was doing autographs of the 70s set at that point. So I was like slowly pulled back into cards. Like, yeah,
So are
10
you
years.
actually far along on like a 1970
Yeah.
autograph set, or?
Yeah. So after I completed, I'm like, well, what do I do now? And, besides starting 71, I was like, well, I should start getting these cards autographed. And Art Shamsky was going to do a speech at the Yogi Berra Museum on a book he had written about the 69 Mets. And I'm like, it's free admission and he's going to sign a card. So I went there and Art Shamsky was the first card. And then I started to learn about TTM and I started to go to these all of the shows. Like if you go to the Westchester show in like 2018, 2019, there's a lot of guys who were in the 1970s set because there's all the 69 Mets, there's Kranepool, Wayne Garrett, those kind of guys, Cleon Jones, but then they had Steve Carlton, Rod Carew. Um, there was even Jim Perry was a free at that point. So there's a lot of guys that I started getting that way. And then I was doing TTM. I bought some of them, although I didn't buy until later. And this started in 18. And the sad part about it is a lot of the people that were alive in 2018, 2019 have now passed along. I mean, a lot of the
Yeah.
guys who were 1970 set in the last 5 years have passed on. So they're TTMs I got from Brooks Robinson, Al Kaline, even guys that are common cards that they're just not around anymore. I'd say the set is 720 cards. I'm at about 320 at this point, so I'm not even quite halfway, but it's a lot. I'll do a show on that eventually. But as the players die, and some of the cards you really can't get, and some of them are really expensive. It's becoming more and more difficult. I mean, I was getting 5 to 10 TTMs coming in a week. And so for 2018, 2019, I probably went through about 200 autographs. But then, COVID completely killed it all. It's just like I stopped.
Yeah.
Sending TTMs out. And then the other thing is postal prices went up. It was a lot easier to do it, 5 years, 6 years ago. And then, like I said, a lot of these guys they were elderly, so they've passed on. When Cepeda passed away this week, I thought to myself, yeah, I did a TTM with him 5 years ago, and here it is. He's moved on also.
Oh yeah. So I mean, is the set even a possibility to complete now, or?
No, you can't do all 720 because there's two players who passed away after the card was printed and before the season started, or before the cards were issued.
Yeah.
One of them is Miguel Fuentes, a rookie for the Seattle Pilots, who was killed in a bar room in I think he's Dominican, in the Dominican Republic during the after like January or whatever. And another one's Paul Edmondson, who was a pitcher for I think one of the American League teams. He was in a car accident before spring training, so you can't do those two. Munson is only said to have had like 3 of those cards signed, the 70 rookie, and they're like 12,000 or more. And there's a few others. There's a few others where the players they died, and like this Chico Ruiz is another one. He died like in 73 or something. So you can't complete it. You can get probably up close to 700 of them, but at this point, I was in negotiations at the Philly show, and then again at the Westchester show with the same dealer for a Nolan Ryan. But you can still get Nolan Ryan. It's just expensive, and I'm really not crazy about sending the card out because the card is expensive too. It's a high number. So, but yeah, I mean, I get 1 or 2 every once in a while, and I'll get up at some point. I'll get up to 400 or so, but it's a lifelong thing now. I feel like it's not something I could do in a month.
Sure. So are you also actively working on that 72 set as well, or is that just sort of back burner? Oh,
yeah, 72. I think I'm down to about 20 cards. They're all high numbers. I'll get them eventually.
okay. And we've gotten to see some of the pretty impressive cards on your channel already when you bring in super collectors. Are you also kind of doing any player runs yourself, or is it just kind of picking key cards that you like?
I mean, I haven't started a new player run, and the runs that I'm doing now are mostly sets. And I'm doing the 39 Yankees. and that's I have 2 cards left in that. It's only 11 cards, and I have 2 left, so it's not like I've done a lot. But that one I'm going to get at the National, the DiMaggio and the Bill Dickey. I don't really have. I haven't started player runs. I do Dodgers, particular teams. I've done a lot of shows on the teams that I collect. I started a little bit of Reggie Jackson, but a lot of his cards go into a period that I'm not really interested in. The mid '80s. But I got the Reggie rookie, and I'm starting to get cards in the '70s, all high grade slabs. So I'll probably get a Reggie run for a while. I'm looking over here. Here and there, it's like guys whose runs I'm not going to ever complete, but if I see a card of theirs, I'll pick it up. Like Musial or Bill Terry, I have one of his, and guys like that. So, but I'm more actively working on the 52 Bowman. I don't have the Mantle, but I have the Mays, and I have the Musial, and I have a lot of comments to fill. The 53 Bowman in slabs only, which I got another 2 this week, so I think I'm down to about 40 in that one out of 120. And the 51 Burke Ross, which I have 1 card left now, which I'm pretty excited about. I'm kind of working on the Red Heart, but the Mantle obviously is an expensive card, so we'll see. So it's a lot of projects. When I email myself the list of what I need when I go to like a show like the National or Strongsville or whatever, it'll be about 10 different files of stuff. So like I'll email myself a copy of what I need from 72. Or 53 Bowman or whatever. So when I'm at the show, I just open up my email, click on the file, and open it up, and I know what I need. But yeah, there's about 10 of them at this point. And then of course, I see stuff that I like looking at, and I like the price, and I pick it up, and it's not necessarily part of any particular aspect of the collection, but it fits in thematically, I feel like. So, if I just picked up this card, 1947 Tip Top. Johnny Mize in a 3, which is a high grade for these tip tops. And I've been collecting Mize. He's a hard player to get all the cards on because he's got a bunch of weird issues in the 30s and 40s. And he's got a tip top red in 52 that's impossible to get. So I don't think I'm ever going to complete Johnny Mize, but a beautiful card like this fits right into the collection, and I just saw it pop up in a sale, and I picked it up. So. That's the kind of thing. And I've already done the Johnny Mize show, and I say this on the channel. It's like, just because I've done the show doesn't mean I stop collecting the player. If I find another Sandy Koufax card I don't have, or Seaver or whoever, I've done the show, but I'm still collecting the player.
So I know there's a huge Yankee love, but outside of that, is it mostly focused on like the New York City based stars then?
Yes and no. Giants, New York Giants, Brooklyn Dodgers from that era for the most part, the 50s and late 40s. Yankees, yes, but there are periods of the Yankees history that I'm not really crazy about. I was a fan in the early 70s, so Munson, Mercer, Reggie, Nettles, those kind of guys. If I see the cards, I'm going to pick them up. But I'm not like Dodger collector, or I'm not Yankee collector. I have little bits and pieces here and there. But I also, I have a great amount of respect, even though I'm supposed to be a Red Sox hater. One of my best friends in the hobby is Mark Hoyle, who is the Red Sox guy. And, I have a great amount of respect for Ted Williams. I pick up and I buy Ted Williams cards when I can find them. Musial is another one, just he's a player that goes beyond the team, I feel, even though, Cardinals guys, I'm going to say, a Cardinals collector, but no, Musial, I think, is bigger than the sport. So he's really somebody that I would go after, regardless of what team he played for.
Oh, yeah. Well, he's such a great guy and ambassador for baseball, really. So,
Yep.
I can't see who wouldn't like Stan Musial, honestly. If they don't like Stan Musial, I don't know if I want to know them. So,
yeah, really. He was married to the same woman for like 70 years. Never said about anybody. Played for the same team. Didn't get in any trouble. Was just it's
not a single person out there could say a bad thing about the guy. So
and his stats. If you look at his stats, he was just a ridiculous player. His on base. He was first in the on base percentage for like 15 of 17 years straight. I mean, his numbers, it's just like the black ink is insane on a Stan Musial stats page at Baseball Reference. You're I didn't know how good he was until I started looking more closely at the numbers.
Oh yeah, you put his numbers and performance in Yankee pinstripes, and he's right in that pantheon of Ruth, DiMaggio, Mantle, Gehrig type thing. So
Yep.
yeah. But I know you set aside some other cards, kind of representing
So
your collection. You want to do a little showcase of those and talk about them?
I told you, John, that I had taken out a few cards I haven't shown yet.
Okay.
As I go through the collection, I have to, for the channel, I have to find the collector who goes into a set, and I usually try to match it with something that I have. So
Yeah.
I've had as little as one card of a player. That's enough for me to do a show. But other times I haven't done the show yet for the particular player. So I've never shown this card. And, he just passed away this week. I have, I would say, 80% of all flagship Willie Mays cards, including this very, very nice 1954 Bowman. By the way, another set I'm working on. I'm about 50 cards short. I didn't mention this before, but I got this card for a really good value from a friend on Twitter. I got it raw. I sent it off. We both thought it was going to get a 2, and it got a 3 from SGC. So I'm very happy about this. And this is one of my favorite Willie Mays cards because A, he's smiling, he's relaxed. It's a good picture. He's got his knee up. He's got the bat. It's like he's sitting on the steps of the dugout. And, it's a young Willie Mays and the New York Giants. So really, really love this card. I've never shown it before because it just didn't come up in terms of the channel. And, when Willie passed, I'm not one of those guys that does a show that has, news elements to it. So I wasn't going to do a Willie Mays show the week that he died. But I feel like going back and looking at some of the cards, you forget how beautiful some of them are. And Willie Mays, unfortunately, was not treated well by Topps. Some of his
Not at all.
are not good.
I got proof of that right behind me.
The 61 is for me. I'm collecting it, and I had a 6 of the 61, and I'm looking at this card. I'm like, this card not only doesn't do anything for me, it kind of makes me sad because it's such a bad photo of arguably the best player who ever played. And so I sold it.
Yeah.
And I think I made money on it because I got it in raw, graded it, made money on it. But now I'm thinking I got to go back and buy 61 if I have to do the whole thing again. 66 is another one. I'm sorry, not 66. 66 is pretty good. 64 is another one that's not a good one. He's like looking away.
Yeah, he's looking to the side. Yep.
And then 66 and 69 have the same photo.
Just different zoom. Yep.
Yeah, they use the same photo for that. So he's got some cards that are pretty good. But this is one of the ones that
is one of the better ones. Yes.
That's one of the good ones. So I love this Willie card, and it's it means a lot to me because I am old enough to have seen Willie Mays play. In fact, the first game I ever attended was a 1971 game at Shea Stadium between the Giants and the Mets, and I remember very, very little about it except the fact that my father told me to remember that at the first game I saw Willie Mays played in. So that was important. And then of course he was traded to the Mets the next year, 72. And I remember the day he was traded. I remember where I was when the Mets got Willie Mays, which as an 8-year-old, I didn't realize it's at the end of his career. It doesn't really mean that much. But in terms of just, a big thing to happen to New York sports for Willie Mays to return to New York, regardless of how good he was or how old he was. But so I remember that. So those are things that, important to me personally, which I think affects the way that I collect. Things that mean something to me. And, I didn't own that card as a kid or as a teenager or even in my 20s and 30s. But having a Willie Mays card, having a Willie Mays collection is kind of an important thing for me personally and, in the hobby.
Yeah.
Who doesn't want to have a Willie Mays collection? So
yeah.
The other thing I was talking about Twitter, I've been on Twitter since 2009. So January of 2009. So it's been 15 years. And I did a lot of I have a music account, and I've done a lot of things in music and made friends with a lot of people involved in the music industry. And then later on, I didn't start doing cards on Twitter till like 18, 19, 20. So, people who still follow me, I have like 11,000 followers on Twitter. People who still follow me are there for music, but they know that I'm into cards. So there's a music guy who comes to me and says, my neighbor is an older gentleman who has a bunch of cards and he wants you to take a look at them. And you're the only guy I know that has any connection to cards. So he sends me pictures of the cards, and they're unfortunately all 1950 Bowman, which is the good part. The bad part is every single one of them has tape damage on the top and the bottom because the guy must have taped all of the cards onto something.
Yes.
So I know that if you're going to get damaged 1950 cards, the best, really the only one to get is Jackie. So I've never shown this card on my channel before. This is the 1950 Bowman Jackie Robinson. As you can see, there's tape damage on the top, and even to the point where, let me do it right there. There's a little bit of tape loss here because when they took the tape off the top, it took a little bit of the card with it. And then there's tape damage on the bottom. So the back is absolutely perfect. But this card, because it was raw, and because I knew how much it would be worth, I thought it was going to get a 1. I didn't think it was going to get an authentic, but I guess with the paper loss and the tape damage, SGC decided to give it an authentic with no description. This was graded after they started those descriptions. So I paid cash for this $800, which honestly is probably a little high, but I'm not a dealer, so I'm not one of those guys who can go in and say, I'm going to offer you 60% or 80% or whatever. The card, as it's graded now, is probably worth about $1,000. But I mean, it's one of those things where I wanted to pay, a fair amount for a gentleman who was offering his cards, get myself, a hobby. I guess you could. I don't want to use the G word, but it's one of the iconic cards in the hobby to own.
There you go. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah. So you want this in your collection. So this is the first time I'm showing it on YouTube, but. Very happy to have this. I'm not actively pursuing an upgrade, although if one comes my way, I probably, and it's the right price, I might do it. But at this point, I'm just happy to have this card.
It's a great card.
Yeah, in a nice presentable. There is that paper loss there, and you can see if you look really closely. I'm sorry, the tape damage is on these sides. You can see that like darkness right there. That's the tape. Damage. Yeah. So. I feel like that card kind of represents one of the things that I can do in the hobby that maybe not other people can do, which is to use connections in other areas of the world and other things that I've done to, somebody from the music world has cards, they're going to come to me. But let me tell you one other thing. Two people who have great music connections, who are deep in the hobby, who you might not even know about. I think you probably know John Keating.
Oh, yeah.
John worked in the music industry. He's worked in the music industry for 30 years. So when he and I met at Strongsville, we went off in a corner and started talking about it, and none of it had to do with cards. It was all about musicians, tours, different people that we knew, my experiences, his experience. So it was a great conversation. And then we even met inside the show, and we were talking about music inside of the show, which was kind of funny. The other one is a person I knew before I even got back into cards, is Al from Love of the Game Auctions. Al from Love of the Game Auctions is not only one of the greatest vintage dealers that's ever existed, but he's also owns his own record label. And he's thrown concerts, and he also had, or I think he had a show on, what's the New Jersey, FDU. He had a show on FDU, Fairleigh Dickinson. Fairleigh Dickinson University has a pretty good FM channel called WFDU, and he had a show on there, and he brought me on. So Al and I sat on the radio and talked about music before we even knew that each other had a card thing going on. So it's pretty funny. But, that's another way that I'm able to collect is by using people, people come to me and say, look, I have these cards or whatever. A friend of mine has this, and a lot of times it's crap. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's a freaking 1950 Jackie Robinson that I can get at 80% of what it's worth. So. Oh,
yeah. And, the main part of the card looks gorgeous.
Yeah.
And now you got this story around it. So to me, it's almost better than a prettier, overall grade one.
So one of the things that I did when I got back in 18 and 19, and then later on started to get really serious after I started finishing my cassettes, was to go back and grab cards that I had had as a kid that I didn't have anymore for one reason or other. I sold them. I was in college, I needed beer money, or or I traded them away or whatever. And these two cards, I've never shown this on my channel before. It's a 1958 Ted Williams in a 4. It's a 50s card. It's not a particularly rare card, but I had a copy of this when I was like 16, and it was a really important card for me to have because my dad's from Boston. He was a Braves fan, but he also liked Ted Williams because Ted Williams was the greatest hitter alive. But
Sure.
so I picked this guy up at a 4, pre-boom. So I probably paid, I don't know, 100 and something for it. It wasn't even that expensive. But classic Ted Williams card. He didn't have that many cards in the 50s. So, and then this one, which I have shown on the channel during my Sandy Koufax, but I had a 56 Koufax when I was 16 years old that I bought at a show, either Plainview or Nassau Coliseum for $10 or whatever. And I don't know what happened to it. No idea whether I probably sold it, but anyway, I went back out and bought another Koufax. It cost me a little more than $10 this time though, unfortunately. So, so that's another thing I did with my collection is kind of try to replace stuff that I have a great affection for because I had it when I was a teenager, and now it's, I can go back and buy it. It's a little more expensive, but different.
Yeah.
The other thing I like to do in my collection is cards that speak to me because they're art. And I'll show you one, which, everybody shows this card, and it's become kind of a polarizing card. Some people think it's the greatest card ever made. Some people think it's way, way, way overrated. I happen to think it's one of the greatest cards ever made. And it's, of course, this beautiful piece of art, the 1953 Bowman Color Pee Wee Reese, which I think I showed on my channel in my first video, my introduction video, but I haven't shown it since. And you can see it's a 6. I went out and spent some serious money on this card because it was a card that I wanted in high grade. And I think Alex Bowman 53 has a 6 also, and no one else has it in this high a quality of what you see on YouTube. So I'm pretty happy that this is one of my crown jewels of the collection, and it should be because I think it's one of the greatest cards ever made. And one gets a little less attention. It's a set that people are really starting to pick up on. I know Mike Moynihan just got a bunch of these in the Grail collection and got them graded. And I said, Mike, I texted him. I said, I'm interested in this card. He's like, no, I'm keeping all these. So I'm like, good idea. And Mitchell, Chicago, White Sox collector, is getting into these big time. In fact, he's working on the set, and we're talking about doing a show. It's the Diamond Stars. People are really starting to pick up on these cards being just amazing pieces of art. And this is Bill Terry, of course. He's the last player in the National League to ever hit over 400, which he did in 1941. And a Hall of Famer, of course, great New York Giant. And it's a 2, but it presents really nicely. And I think this card is absolutely a piece of art. I have the original picture that it comes from. It's back there. I didn't pull it out. But this picture, they added a new background because the background behind him is actually in Braves Field in the original picture. So this is the kind of thing that I like to collect. And I do a little Bill Terry. I don't have all of Bill Terry's cards. And we talked about the show.
If you're going to do that show, doing that show, Dan over at Old Sarge Collects, coincidentally on a previous episode of Collector to Collector, actually has the complete set graded. So
of the Diamond Stars?
Yes.
Oh, nice. He might be, because Mitchell and I have talked, and he might be the one. I think he might be the person that Mitchell has said, you should have him on also with me. And I said, okay. I mean, this time my Diamond Stars collection is a little bit short of what it should be. It's only about 6 or 7 cards, and it's all Hall of Famers. But I have the Hubble in a 6, which I just showed last week on my Carl Hubble show, and the Bill Terry, and I have a few others. But I want to get Crossetti, which is a really beautiful card, and I do want to get the Lefty Grove, but it's expensive. So I think probably I'm going to start picking up a little more of those, and then I'll have enough to be able to do that show. I also had the great fortune of like I said, having a lot of good friends on Twitter, and I started out thinking I was going to get the monster. I started just buying up all the T206 cards that I could find at good prices. I subsequently decided then that I was going to do only Mets. Mets. No, I was going to do only Yankees, Giants, and Dodgers. And then I realized, like, I don't really need cards of a lot of these guys that I never heard of. So now my T206 set is about 35 cards, maybe. Mostly Hall of Famers, some important historical figures, some guys that are like Mike Donlin, who I like as a player because he's really interesting. But I've never shown this one before, which is Mordecai Brown. I got this it's a 2MK because it's got one of those, like they used to mark the backs up. And I think somebody even wrote over here. If I can, it says pitcher.
Okay.
Anyway, it's a little bit of a generous grade, but it has the hologram, so it's not an old grade, but it's a wonderful portrait of a pitcher who I think people do appreciate, but maybe don't appreciate quite enough. Mordecai Three Finger Brown from Chicago Cubs. He played for a couple other teams later on in his career, but for the most part, he's known for his connection with the Cubs. And I actually love this card. Not only the red background, the sort of early 20th century haircut. He's got this look, and then he's got the Cubs jersey on with the collar. It's just, to me, this represents what a T206 portrait card should look like. And certainly love this as a piece of art, but I got it for, I don't know, at this point, probably half of what it's worth. And I didn't buy it that long ago, maybe 4 years ago. So really happy to have something like that. It represents for me friendships that I've made, my appreciation for these particular cards, and, just understanding the history of the game and the history of a player like this.
Sure.
So a couple more cards I'm going to show. One is I decided in 2020 that one of my aspects of my collection that I wanted to do was to get 5 players in particular. One of them, and I didn't have cards of any of these guys at the time that I said this. One of them was Ruth, who I did subsequently get a Sinella card, which I fell out of love with, and now my biggest goal in life is to get a 33 Gaudy Babe Ruth. Any one of them, doesn't matter. Gehrig, who I subsequently did get 34. Satchel Paige, who I ended up getting the 53 after that. Ty Cobb, I got a T206, and Joe DiMaggio. So what the 51 Burke Ross set did for me, or let me put it this way. The reason I started to really actually become interested in this set is because somebody explained to me that Joe DiMaggio cards are so expensive that the only one you're going to be able to get at a reasonable amount is the 1951. I think I spent $325 on this card, and it's gone up in value. But at the time, this was like 2020, so DiMaggio cards were all ridiculous. They're all 4-figure cards, except for this one. So this is how I started my DiMaggio collection, and also how I started my 1951 Burke Ross collection, because then I went out and got the Spawn and the Mize, and started getting the Berra and got all the stars. And then I realized I got the stars. It's a 40-card set, and there's a lot of cool players in this set that aren't necessarily stars, but they're cool to have in your collection. Like the Phillies Whiz Kids are all in here. So I got this. This card represents for me not only just understanding how to collecting strategies, but appreciating sets, because I didn't even know this set that well, because you figured out a way to collect somebody, and now the set itself becomes attractive. And the last one, and REA auctions, auctions, John.
Sure.
And so I go through auctions all the time. I was in the REA. I didn't win anything, but Collector Connection I do every time Scott Russell puts out one. Al from Love of the Game just opened up this week. Sterling auction just closed. I just sent the check out for that one. Sirius, REA. There's a few others I have to go over my head. Oh, Brockelman, of course. So when I started to do REA auctions, I realized they have so many cards. This card actually has some dust on it, so I haven't shown it. They have so many cards, in particular cards the same card over and over again. So I noticed what was happening with like the Mickey Mantles is that if they had 1 year and they had a 6, a 5, a 4, and a 3, the 3 was going for way less than it normally would if it was just there on its own. So I used this strategy to pick up a 4.5 of this 1957 Mickey Mantle, which
Nice.
I was just, I've never shown this card before. I was going through REA and they had like 4 versions of this card, you know, like a 7, a 6, a 5, like the 4.5 went for, and this was in 2021. I know it's because it was after one of the Philly shows. I don't know why it went for it, but the hammer price on this card was $500, which, you know, that's about 200 less than you would normally pay for it. And it's probably a little more now since it's a, you know, it's a 4.5. It's a little off center, probably is the reason why it's a 4.5, but the corners are super sharp. The surface is perfect. Doesn't have a lot of that, the snow that you get in the 57s.
The 57s are common.
So I got this card, like I said, the hammer was 500. And I was like, wow, that's a strategy. So I actually use that strategy occasionally. And, you know, if you, it has to be a big auction. It has to be an auction where they're going to have multiple copies of the same card. And, you know, you can sometimes sneak in underneath getting a cheapie. And I have a lot of different strategies when it comes to auctions, and sometimes they really work well. Let me just pull out one more card for an auction. Let me see if I can find it here. I don't know what I did with it. Oh, it's right here. This, I mentioned Scott Russell from Collector Connection. So actually, no, I think this is from Sirius. Sirius Auctions do almost all PSA. Everything is PSA. The back of the auction has multiple other little grading companies. They have like 20 SGC cards, and then occasionally they will have raw cards. So I went to the back of the Sirius auction and got this card raw. And I looked at it and I said, oh my God, that's perfect. And I think
Nicely centered. Those ones don't come always centered.
I spent some ridiculously low number on this card, like $28 or something, some ridiculous number. And I knew it was going to grade pretty well. I mean, I was thinking probably 5, maybe 6, but 6.5. I'm kicking SGC. I wish they had just notched it up 1/2 a point higher. If this was a 7, it would be like a $400 card. So anyway, that's another thing you could do is just find some. I mentioned Scott Russell in the Collector Connection because I bought a 39 or 40. No, I think it was a 40 play ball Charlie Gehringer for about, I don't know, $40 raw, and SGC gave it a 6. I subsequently sold it because I made a lot of money on it, and I was able to use it to buy other cards. And I'd like to have Charlie Gehringer back in my collection. I'm working on that. But sometimes you can find cards in auctions that they're raw that go for a fraction of what you would get them, and then you grade them for $15, and suddenly you've tripled your value. Or like I said, the other strategy that I use a lot is to track the lower graded versions of cards where they have higher grades, and a lot of times those will go for under what they, what the sticker usually is on those. So that's what I got for you, John.
Okay, lots of great stuff.
Yeah.
But so I guess up next, let's transition to YouTube. So a year now.
Yeah.
I guess first question there is what brought you to YouTube in the first place then?
Well, I'd been watching one of the members of one of my major groups on Twitter. It's a chat that, it's everything. It's people talk about their lives, their kids, their days. People talk about the cards that they brought in. And it's a really well done sort of, it's a really well moderated kind of chat. And one of the major members in there, he hasn't been in that much lately, but is Ryan Nolan. So Ryan used to send in links to his channel, and his channel back 3 years ago, he was going to shows. I think he went to like 60 shows one year. So he was going
out, yes.
He was doing, show videos. He was talking. The guy knows so much about cards that I was just absorbing all of this information from this guy who's like half my age. And, I met him a few times, great guy. And, but he's, provided me with so much information. I said, well, he can't be the only one. So I started looking on YouTube and I found Chris Sewell, of course. And Chris Sewell, I'm a tremendously big fan of Chris Sewell. I'm a fanboy. I've met him a couple of times and taken selfies because, this guy's the best. He's not only incredibly chock full of information, he's totally transparent about it. He'll tell you all the information. I learned so much about grading from him and about assessing cards, buying collections. And he's also really, really funny. He's got that sort of dry wit that I think. Whenever I leave comments for Chris, I feel self-conscious because I want them to be funny. I want them to be the funniest thing that I could write for him. So then I started watching Chris, and then Moynihan, and then other guys, and I started, and then I know Alex Bowman 53 from Twitter, and then he invited me onto his channel. I think the week I had opened up my channel, or a week after, or whatever it was, and so I started to realize that I have a collection, but I'm not just going to get on and just do videos. I want to have a way that I want to have a theory for the channel. And so I came up with this theory that I was going to have on guests that I knew from Twitter or other places. They would all be super collectors. I had a mutual friend, I had a Williams friend. I had Kurt the Clementi was my Clementi friend. I had about 5 guys lined up to do it. So that was the theory, was that I was going to start it out that way. And I've kind of stuck to it. And, I feel like it's grown to the point where now people are reaching out to me to say, you think this collection is worthy to be on your show? And I'm like, yeah, damn straight it is. Let's do it. So it's gotten easier. And of course, I've met people through YouTube who've been on the channel. I can't speak highly enough of him, as most people. But Orlando was a guy who came on my show. I think he's on like the 6th episode. Before I had 100 subscribers, or maybe even less, came on and did a show, and I am forever grateful. But we all know him as one of the best guys personally in the hobby. So he proves it every time you have any interaction with him. So can't.
One of the ambassadors.
Yeah, can't say enough good things about him. And other guys came on too. Other YouTube guys came on, and it's between the people that I know off of YouTube, the people I know on YouTube, I've been able to have a really nice number of guests, and of course you guys with letting me have the channel on a Sunday night at 9 for my 1-year anniversary. I can't thank you enough for that. And I had 11 or 12 guests come back and talk about cards, and it was just it was 2 hours of just pure fun. So.
Oh, I'm glad you liked it. And,
yeah,
just to announce to anybody out there, if you've got a show that you want to bring to us, we will work with you and probably put it on our channel. So, we're not a closed society here. We welcome collectors to come in and join us, and we're happy to meet more people. So,
well, I should mention it. I'm pretty sure it's official behind the scenes, but it's not official in front of the camera. I am taking over the 21st of July on Sunday night. I've been offered that spot, and I have 3 guests on, and these guests are killer. And it's going to be this is the last thing you're going to do before you go to the National, because the National, I'm leaving like 3 days later. And I think one of my guests is leaving like maybe the next day. So I'm not going to give up the guests yet. We'll make that be a little bit of a surprise. But yeah, the Sunday night, the 21st, I'm looking forward to having a robust chat about the National with 3 prominent hobby collectors, YouTube guys, and people who are going to be big personalities at the National.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, should be fun.
So do you feel like the experience then on YouTube has changed anything that decision making of cards you're buying then as well?
Oh, absolutely. John, the thing about YouTube though is like I have a show lined up with a guest. I don't have enough cards for it for this particular player. I mean, I have a few, but I don't feel like my collection of this player is good enough to have the show yet. So I'm going, and one of my targets at the National is this player's rookie card, and it's not an inexpensive card, but this is the way that has affected my collecting strategy is to fit. Now I'm starting to fit cards into shows that I have coming up, or the other way around, shows that happened already. That I'm like, oh wow, look at that card that guy just showed. I want that, and then I'll target it. It's the hold on a sec. My Stan Musial collector friend absolutely inspired me to get this card, which
That's
you've
a
seen a
gorgeous
number
card.
of. I think there's like 4 of us now who have this card in a 4.
Yeah.
I know Adam. I think Adam and who's the other one? I forget who the other one is, but I think a number of people have that card in a 4. But that's the other thing, is that the YouTube shows, people come on and show me cards, and I'm like, yeah, that belongs in my collection. So that's an inspiration. The other inspiration is watching, people like you and Theo with the Clemente cards, and Orlando Moynihan, all these people, Keating. It gives me sort of not only an education about how to collect, but also a way of sort of seeing cards a little bit differently. And now, since Orlando was on my show talking about Cuban cards and the way to get Negro League players through 1940s Cuban cards has become something that I'm really, really interested in now. And I wouldn't really have necessarily have known that or pursued it unless I had that particular guest on my show. And the other thing is discipline. I've learned, from different people, not only YouTube but off of YouTube, is having discipline in your collection. You don't just show up at a show and start throwing money around. You gotta be precision, surgical precision, going for different things that fit your collection, but understanding that they're within a budget and they're also, you're not overspending for stuff. So YouTube has been, for me, the community has been a invaluable resource for growing my collection and making my collection more focused.
Well, that's great. Because I've didn't find you for a little while, and then once I did, I started watching all the old ones, because lots of cool stuff on there. So
Yeah, I feel like I've gotten better too. So I watched some of my early videos. I'm like, man, loosen up, relax.
yes, that for most of us without experience in front of a camera, those early episodes are very stiff. So
Yeah. And just making it more entertaining. And people are always, I think, driving for views and comments and likes and everything. And I don't know. I mean, it is kind of important to me that I'm up to 680 subscribers. I feel like that's a pretty good number for a year. And I know some people struggled early on. I think the growth of the vintage community on YouTube has helped for somebody like me to come in now and get a lot of subscribers. If I started 5 years ago without a lot of the guys that sort of were trailblazers in this area, that I'd have 100 or 90 subscribers. So the fact that there's such a growing and such a vibrant community where people putting videos out every day, that has helped me to get more subscribers and more interest and more people, participating. I just put out an SGC reveal yesterday, and it already has like 40 comments on it. And I'm like, this is wonderful. I should also mention, he hasn't been a guest on my show, and I'm trying to figure out how to get him onto my show, but I am a huge Mangini fan. I watch everything that guy puts out, and I think that he's a source of information. He's a wonderful personality, and he's a guy that I'm really looking forward to meeting at the National. So let me just get my pro Mangini stuff in there also.
if you want, I can tag him down below so he can see you buttering them up. So
yeah, I'll butter him up face to face. So as long as he understands that I'm sincere, I think that's important.
Yeah, he's a good guy. I mean, I'm sure he will welcome an invite from you. So
yep.
But yeah, and then I approached this myself with my number one goal was always just to meet people and do what I'm doing now, which is making friends. I think it's awesome. We're 3 weeks away from spending time together in the same Airbnb in Cleveland. So
yeah.
I'm living the dream as far as my goals already for YouTube. So
yeah, I mean, I have goals, pick up this card, get that card. But in terms of the collection that I have right now, I don't feel like I'm really missing anything. Well, except for the Gaudy Babe Ruth. If I got that would. But I feel like I have enough of a collection that I can enjoy it. So I pull out cards for this show, stuff that I haven't shown on my show, and I'm like having fun just looking at them. It just going back and remembering why I bought this and how it's important to me is a special thing. So my collection is already making me feel good about a lot of things, and in that sense, I feel like I already won. It's only been a year, and hopefully I'm just going to keep going as long as I can. But I feel like I've already won the game, so to speak, and that the joys that I wanted to get out of it, I've gotten out of it, and I continue to. So that makes, for me, the whole YouTube experience, it's a win-win for everybody, honestly. So yeah, looking forward to the house. I know 4 different guys have CPAPs, so there's going to be a lot of noise.
Yeah, I'm in that club. Sorry.
And the rest of us that don't have CPAPs are going to be snoring, everybody, and then so. It's 12 old guys. Well, not old. Theo's not old.
Yeah, some are sub 40.
Yeah, this suits. So I think I'm the second oldest guy in the house. But anyway, I should also mention before we're done, the guy who put the house together is Matt from the Card Story, who has also been a tremendously important influence in my collecting strategy and my collecting attitude, and keeping an even keel. Being somebody, because you know how he is, he's very even keeled, really like very good judgment, very good, very sort of like equanimity is the word I'm looking for. And I tend to be up and down and moody and cranky and all that other stuff. And he when I interact with him, he keeps me at an even keel. And I think that's really important, not only in life, but not only collecting, but also in life. So just wanted to give a shout out to that YouTube person who also came on my show early in the show and, did a show with me before I really even had much of a following. So big shout out to him.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's part of the club, too, of people that, just want to have friends on here, and it's fun. So,
yep.
And so any last words before I get into what I like to do with some 10 questions that have nothing to do with any of this?
Let's go.
All right. So as a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
President of the United States.
Okay. Thankless job ultimately, but ages you prematurely.
Like I said, I was the youngest of 7 and everybody doted on me, including my mother. So I thought I was the greatest thing on earth. So I thought when I was like 7 years old, I thought, hey, I'm going to be president. So let's
there you go. You had the ego for the job then.
Yes, I had a big ego when I was 7 years old. I still kind of have a bit. Anyway, go ahead. Next one.
Who's the most famous person you've ever encountered directly in real life?
There's been a lot of music people. That's a hard and sports people too. Most famous person.
You can name a couple. I wouldn't mind.
I've met David Byrne from the Talking Heads. I'm going to go with him.
All right. Burning down the house, huh?
That's right.
Yeah. So outside, I'm not going to give you the easy thing of the standard pet animals. What is your favorite animal?
Now? Cats. Used to be dogs, now it's cats.
No, excluding the pet animals.
Oh, excluding pet animals.
Yeah, those are too easy of an answer. Come on.
Okay. I live in New York City, so animals are the worst in New York City. It's freaking rats and pigeons.
You got rats, and then you got flying rats, basically, right?
I guess my favorite animal that's not a rabbit's pets. Can I go with rabbit?
But not commonly.
Okay, let's go with the rabbit. We were watching one last night. I was out on Long Island, and we were watching one. I thought he was really cool. So let's go with rabbit.
Okay. If you had the ability to pick anyone who's ever lived, live a day of their life, and you have the abilities they have, so you get to experience whatever they can do, who would you want that to be?
All right. I'm not getting this. I get to be somebody famous for one day.
Like you can suddenly be Michael Jordan in his prime and do everything that he was able to do and see how that feels.
Yeah, I'm also a history guy, so I pretty much want to be King Henry VIII. I think he's probably like the most powerful person on earth in a very particular kind of way. So I want to be King Henry VIII for one day.
Okay. I mean, clearly, since he got to
Sorry.
change the entire religion of a major country
Exactly.
on his own whim. So,
You get to be married 8 times, although you don't do it in one day, but yeah, you get to be married 8 times, do whatever you want, and be a great athlete early in your career, and then just not career, but early in your life, and then just eat and drink so much that you end up being, 300 pounds.
exactly. All right. So, do you have a favorite all-time movie?
Oh, it's Casablanca.
Oh, I mean, I know the famous line, but I don't think I've ever watched that movie from beginning to end.
I've watched it about 50 times, and it gets better every time. There's so many
Okay.
different great subtleties in it. The acting is terrific. Some of my favorite actors of all time. But yeah, Casablanca is number one.
I have made it a point to whatever anybody answers in these questions that I will then watch it ultimately. So that's now on my watch list.
I'm confident you will enjoy it.
Okay, thanks. Do you have a favorite subject in school?
History.
I was expecting that one actually from
Yep.
you. So,
Yep.
all right. If you could choose any superhero power, what would you want?
Oh wow. These are the kinds of questions people think of, but I don't. I don't know. I, I'm my. I guess Hulk. Like the strength and all that kind of stuff. That seems to me the one that I would like the most.
Essentially, invulnerable as well. So
Yeah.
that's not too bad. But um, do you have a favorite song?
Yeah. No, it's too much music in my life to have a favorite song.
I figured that might be a tough one for
Yeah.
you with
Yeah.
that experience.
And it's different eras, stuff that I listened to when I was 20 and I put away until I was 40, and it's like there's so much music that's recycled through my life, and I really can't even pick a favorite band, to be honest with you.
Okay. Do you have a favorite food?
Ice cream, come on, it's got to be ice cream.
You especially like it though when it has baseball cards in the packaging.
I just got the Dixie lids, the what's his name, Al Rose and Dixie lids, and it looked like there's ice cream residue on the back, from
Yeah.
60 years, 70 years ago. So yeah, I have a few baseball card things that are ice cream related, but no, ice cream is my favorite.
All right. So, circling back to your collection for the final question, if you had to pick one card that you could save and everything else was going to be gone, what's your one pick?
Yeah, this one I have thought about. Um, it changes all the time, really. But I think I'm going to have to go with right now. It's this card. It's not my most expensive card, although it is an expensive card. It is the T206 portrait greenback Cy Young with Cleveland. I did a show. Another another great YouTube guy who early on in my show decided to come on and do my Al Rosen show, and we talked about this. Is of course Scott Reindeer Studios Scott.
Yeah.
I don't. I'm assuming you've watched his.
Oh yeah, that was his whole big project for a year plus. So,
And
yeah.
he has he after he got it, he went to the Cy Young grave site and it's apparently there's like a little baseball field there, and he was running around. It's a great video. I would recommend
Yes, absolutely.
trip to the Cy Young. But I mean, that to me, that's the only that was brought up because I've shown this card on my channel before. But I kind of feel like it's in many respects the perfect baseball card because it's one of the top players of all time. It's one of the top sets of all time. It's one of the most beloved portraits from that set. And it's not, it's not a 5, it's a 2. It's probably a bit of a generous 2. It's an old label. But
Yeah.
And the card just speaks to me on so many levels. And of course, it's about a $2,000 card. So if I'm going to keep one, I'm going to keep one with a comma in it. So that's my choice.
That was unexpected for me. Yeah. So nice story on that. So
mantles. I mean, I do have a 53 Bowman mantle and a 4, which is probably worth about $3,000, $4,000. So that's probably my most expensive card.
Yeah.
So I would say that, I guess, but no, this is, I think this is, if you're going to start a vintage collection from scratch, like your, Robinson Crusoe on your, or whatever his name was, on your own island, and you've only got one card. This is what do they call it with the Desert Island discs? This is my Desert Island card.
All right. Good choice. All right. That concludes my questions and everything. Any last words for anybody at home?
I hope you'll link below, and I'd like to get up to 1,000 subscribers in the next, few months.
Oh, absolutely. If you're watching this,
my
definitely go subscribe to Dan.
show. And as I said, I'm going to be guest hosting the Sunday night on July 21st on For Collectors, a night that I'm very much looking forward to. If anybody comes up to me at the National and recognizes me from my channel, I will be touched. Do not hesitate to speak to me. I love to speak to people. I will. This is funny because when my musical background goes a number of different levels, but I was recording concerts for a long time. I don't really do it that much anymore, and I have a website for it. And it's been like 15 years of that, and I've had people come up to me at concerts where I was recording and tell me, their favorite show that they downloaded from my website, and that always touched me. So if somebody comes up to me at the National and says, "I really loved your show on Phil Rizzuto and that guest you had, with all those amazing things," like that will mean something to me. If that's my last thing to say is, if you're watching this and you're going to be at the National and you and I have never met before, please introduce yourself. I will be happy to talk to you about anything card related. So there you go.
Great stuff. Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, I feel like if anybody comes up to me, I'm going to want to take their picture so I can show my family. Yeah, see, people actually like what I'm doing with baseball cards.
Tell you, it does get, and now I'm talking too much, but it does get to the popularity of that. When my Philly show video is my first video that went over 1,000. It's now up to about 1,600 views. The thumbnails, the best thumbnail I ever did. My thumbnails are terrible, but it's just pictures of me with different people from the show. There's, Sammy Thunder is in it, and there's Leighton Sheldon. There's Paul from PB's The Card Store up in Newport. There's a couple other people. And my friend Dylan from he was working for PWCC at that point. So I put a lot of people on the thing, and that got really a really good response, was getting people showing that I'll be social with people at a show, and then show how that is important when you go actually do the show floor. So that, I think people like that. I think that's a good thing. So you and I, John, should actually concentrate at the National on taking lots of selfies with various people. So
yeah,
Good
that's
idea.
one of my plans. So
All right.
I don't have any cards to buy, right? All my money's gone.
Yeah, I know. It's funny because I did that before the Atlantic City show. I bought a 54 Jackie Robinson like 2 days before with cash that I had set apart for the National. So I went into the National with that much less money than I had planned. So I know where you're coming from on that, but I didn't completely kill my budget.
Yeah.
I did buy some cards.
When the right card comes along, though, you just gotta pounce.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I have a great amount of respect for your ability to do, to target and go in and get it and make it sort of change your, the complexion of your collection, and then have that great show with all those other guys. And so it was a big event. So good for you.
Thank you. But all right, I guess it's time to wrap things up. So thank you so much for coming on, Dan. Everybody, make sure if you're not subscribed to Dan's channel, go there right now and do that. His channel will be linked even in the title of the video. So that'll be easy for you to do. And everybody, thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.